Hey everybody, welcome back to another Whiteboard Chat, and today I'm going to do something a little bit different. So I wanted to talk a little bit about coaching business. If you're new or interested in starting your own coaching business, things to consider. And this can be a pretty basic video, but I think people really get caught in the, they get deep in the weeds, and there's all kinds of business coaching, and there's so much stuff out there, and everyone says do it this way, do it this way. So I thought I would just drop this video to ease some nerves and add a little clarity to some different topics. So I wanted to break this down, and I have 5 topics here, and we could create lots of subtopics, but these are 5 that I considered relatively important, or maybe not that important based on what you'll see me talk about here. But I want to break each one down, and hopefully this helps some of you that are brand new or earlier on in your coaching career. So the first one is back-end systems. So that would be things like check-in process, consultations, intakes, corresponding with clients, schedules, things like that. So a mistake that a lot of new coaches make is they're kind of willy-nilly about stuff because they just don't have that many clients, right? They can talk to all their clients all day long because they only have 10, right? So what happens over time is they start to get stretched thin and things get too chaotic and scattered because they don't have back-end systems in place when that client load reaches 20, 30, 40, 50 and beyond, right? Really easy things that you can do that will save you a ton of time is making sure that you're always sticking to check-in times. Enforce these things, they are very important. Making sure that you refine your check-in process and intake process over time. What I mean by that is you'll notice that you're going back and forth on a lot of things. Like it's like they're always missing this information in their check-in, or they're never giving me this information in their consult. Insert that right into your process. So yes, it takes 30 extra seconds for you to read it or respond to it, but what that does is save you 5 more back and forths that you might have otherwise had to do. So just look at these trends, maybe write things down if you need to, take notes, and start inserting these things right into your actual check-in and intake process, so you're not having to do all these back and forths, and that will save you a ton of time and a ton of hassle later on in the process as your client load starts to accumulate. So this isn't even going into things like setting up a template or doing anything like that. People are going to have different preferences on the actual format that they want to check in, and I'm not necessarily here to tell you to check in one way or another, but I think that you should have a standardized process where each person checks in the same way. Now, of course, their check-ins might vary because people have different goals and you need to ask different questions, but when you can set up some kind of template that is encompassing most of this stuff on the intake and most of this stuff on the check-ins, you're going to save yourself a lot of these back and forth questions and answers and chasing people around. So visibility. So this is talking about social media mainly. If you're doing social media marketing, which if you're new, you probably should be. I mean, even more advanced, I think it's a good idea. Crossing platforms is always helpful. So if you're doing things like lives and podcasts and corresponding with other people, try to step out of your circle a little bit because you're just recycling the same people all the time. Try to make sure that you're doing these things with new coaches, people that you know enough to connect with, but they don't really share exactly the same audience with you. So don't just do a live with your best friend every week, right? A podcast with the same host may be great because you can build a relationship and a storyline and a rapport, but I think it's also important to step out and connect with other people as well, and this will increase visibility a lot. So that's a really simple way to start to increase your visibility. ROI, so understanding where your returns are coming from. So just basically understanding like what kind of content, if we're talking content, is giving you ROI. Just because you get more likes on something doesn't necessarily mean that's translating to a transaction or to someone signing up or someone inquiring with you. Sometimes posts that really hit home with people that don't have a lot of viewership, they can bring you a lot of ROI. So paying attention to that, paying attention to what's actually attracting people to come to you. Demographics. So I don't really think you need to worry too much about demographic initially, and the reason for that is because you just need to build your client base. So understand that it's important to touch all demographics initially. So don't come into this and think, I just want to coach competitors. Good luck with that, because you don't have a reputation, you don't have a client base, you don't have testimonials, you don't have referrals. All right, so you need to make sure that you're touching all demographics. Not only is this going to help you figure out what you like to work with, but it's also going to expose you to more situations. Exposure to more situations means more experience, which means better skill set. So don't limit yourself on demographic initially. Your content and your visibility are going to dictate this as well. So like, depending on what you put out is what you're going to attract. So, if you're putting out gimmicky content that's just funny reels all the time, which humor can attract clients for sure, you may not get a quality client. So just understand that you should mix things up, and you should produce a mixture of content, and you should work with probably you should work with a varied demographic initially as you build your client base. Overhead. First off, like when you're new, there really shouldn't be a lot of overhead. Like you can start with a social media platform, an email, and a laptop. You don't really need much more than that starting out. Now, if you want to spend the extra money and you want to get someone to help you with video editing or marketing or any of these things, that's fine. But ultimately, you're going to have extra time probably because you just, again, don't have a huge client load. So maybe your overhead's going into education, perhaps, like actually educating yourself to become a better coach. Maybe if you are spending money on business coaching, maybe it's someone that can actually help you organically grow your business rather than just funneling people in and not being able to service them. So overhead really shouldn't be that high unless you're choosing to allocate some of your financial resources to things like education. Business backend. So this is just talking about things like payroll and any other business backends that you're going to have. So taxes, stuff like that. Just make sure that you start these things early on. Get an accountant. Accountants for something like this aren't terribly expensive because we just don't have a lot of moving parts. Most of the time, if you're a new coach, you don't have employees. So there's really not a whole lot involved. If you can pay taxes quarterly, if you can get that set up, that's awesome to do. Most people are going to be fine. Just being an LLC is not going to be a whole lot to it, but don't get caught not having any of this stuff in play, owing a bunch of money on taxes later, or not having a spreadsheet for your payroll or some kind of system that you use. So it's important to have this stuff in place up front, and it will save you a lot of time in the long run. Also, things like liability forms and stuff like that, making sure you have all this stuff hashed out before you start, and you should be good to go. So again, guys, like starting out, don't overcomplicate it. Your goal should really be provide the best service you possibly can, be personable, treat people right, and start to build a reputation. That's what's going to serve you in the long run. And then all this other stuff are really just kind of secondary considerations. So if you're new, or if you're only been coaching a couple years, I really hope this video was helpful to you guys, and we'll talk to you next time.